In this video, I'm going to share with you 3 clubs that I think you should avoid using whatever level of golfer you are, because if you do use these clubs due to their lack of forgiveness, versatility and inappropriate use, they can make the game a lot harder. Hi guys, I'm PGA professional Matt Fryer, and these 3 clubs that I'm going to talk about now are ones that I have recommended to hundreds of my students and they've seen benefits. We've either recommended a replacement club or replacing the club you used for an alternative shot. Now before we get stuck into the video and look at our first club, why not hit the subscribe button down below? It's totally free to do and you're going to find out loads of useful little tips that can help you improve and enjoy the game more. Let's take a look at this first club. And the first club that we're going to take a look at is the low spinning driver versus the high forgiveness driver. There was a trend that we were told that low spin, high launch was the best thing for our drivers to get the most distance out of it. And I think a lot of amateurs sort of fell for this and we were always seeking this out and searching this. But I'm going to hit a few shots and just show you the difference actually between the 2 drivers, because what we've got to understand is that both heads are actually designed to do different things, and for the average golfer being around that 18 handicap, the low spin driver, we may as well get rid of it, because that driver is designed to spin low, it's designed to get distance, but what it isn't designed to do is help us out on our missed strikes. But that's not to say that the forgiving driver actually won't produce distance and actually won't produce speed, because yes, they're designed a little bit differently. We can see that when we look at the 2 drivers side by side, the face of the low spinning driver is deeper, there is more weight towards the front, the loft of the head is generally lower. The more forgiving one has a larger footprint, it actually is 460cc versus the 440cc of the low spinning driver. And the reason for that is to move weight around the perimeter of the more forgiving driver to make those off-centered strikes a little bit better. So let's take a look at some numbers of how both those drivers actually performed. And what we can see, and where we sometimes maybe avoid the forgiving driver, is because we think, well, it's not going to get me maximum distance. It actually outperformed the low spin driver. The reason for that being is that if you don't get that low spin driver completely out of the center and you haven't got the appropriate impact factors, you're not going to see the most from it. As where from the forgiving driver, because of how technology and the drivers work now, we actually see that it outperforms. Yes, it's only 3 yards, but it's still an outperformance of the low spinning driver. And we even see tour pros now actually using things like the max drivers and the most forgiving ones because of this reason. Also, the big factor that's going to help us out massively is that offline number. 7 yards offline with the more forgiving driver versus 17.9 with the low spin driver. Now that equates to when we're on the golf course hitting more fairways while maintaining distance, which makes the game easier. So don't think that the most forgiving driver is totally for beginners. If you get it fit for you and it's correct, then you're going to see the benefit of both worlds, forgiveness and distance. Let's take a look at another club that you may want to avoid that became quite trendy. And the club that I think that you should avoid using is the lob wedge, the 60-degree wedge, and any wedge that is above that loft, because I see this so many times. I've even got another video on the channel explaining how and what you should do if you are thinking of using a 60 and what you should do to actually change that. You can check that out on the channel. But we see it so many times, a basic shot like this where I have about 10 paces up onto the green, I have no real undulation position, I have no hazards to go over, and we see that it's been hit. And even sometimes when we get inside that maybe 75-yard marker, I see the 60 degree coming out all the time. And if we don't strike this club, because of the loft on the face, it's pretty much pointing up nearly straight to the sky. If you don't get it perfect, it's not going to cover the distance you want, and I see it under hit so many times. And if your strike isn't great as well, then it's really going to show you up. So a club that we should do, and maybe what I should think we should do, is maybe use something like the pitching wedge. It's a club that has a loft on it still, so it's still going to get elevation when we're chipping, and what we can do with this one is get away with a little bit more. We can make smaller swings so there's less of a swing to mess up. If you do get a toe heel, slightly thin strike, slightly heavy strike, you're still going to get some distance out of it. And when you're in a scenario like this one here, you simply don't need to try and fly the ball all the way. You can get it running like a putt and get better outcomes by using less loft. So try and avoid using the 60. If it was me, and what I say to a lot of my students is, let's just have the sand wedge, the S, or a 56, and when we garner some short game skills, then we can think about adding maybe a 60 or a 58 into the bag. So another club that I think we should avoid using or limit using is the 2-iron or the driving iron, especially if we're a higher handicapper or a beginner golfer, because they're not very forgiving and they're not very versatile. They're fantastic if you want to use them maybe on a links golf course to really get the flight going low, but you've got to be good to do that. As where if you were using something like the 5 wood, this golf club here is going to be a lot easier to use. The reasons for that are, A, it's got a bigger sole, so you're going to get a little bit more relief when you're actually hitting it off the deck. It's also got a shallower face, so it's going to be easy to pop it up in the air. And also because of the way that the head is constructed, on those missed strikes, the toes and the heels, you're actually going to still get a pretty decent ball flight out of it. So if you've got a 2-iron in your bag, or you've got a driving iron, God forbid a 1-iron, maybe look at a 5 wood, a 7 wood, a hybrid. Just try it up against the 2-iron and see how it compares. So those are 3 clubs that I think you should avoid or look at alternatives for playing the shots. Guys, I hope that lesson did help, and why not check out the lob wedge video we have on our channel just here to help you maybe get a little bit more use out of that club if you have one in the bag. Thanks for watching, remember to subscribe, and I'll see you in another video very soon.